In this video, I want to show you my new easy way to cover a cake board in fondant. Hi, it's Karolyn. If you want to learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes, then I would love for you to join me by hitting subscribe and the bell. Real quick in this video, I just want to show you I have a new technique on how I cover cake boards in fondant. And I posted a video, it was probably like 2 years ago or something like that, showing you how I do it. However, I find this way to be easier because it contours to the cake a little better. So I don't want to keep talking, let's get right into the video. All right, I want to make the board white. So I have some marshmallow fondant here. And I just popped this in the microwave for about 15-20 seconds to make it pliable. However, I need to add some Tylose powder to it. You see the texture of this, it's pulling apart. It just needs to be smoother. So I have some Crisco. I'm just gonna knead this. And this is Wilton Gum Tex. I just like this container, so I refill it. And I'm just sprinkling on about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon on here. This is about 1 pound of fondant, and just knead that together. And I just want to set this aside, so it's going to take about 15 to 20 minutes for the Tylose powder to start doing its magic. So I'm just going to sprinkle down some cornstarch and let this sit, and then I will check on it in a little bit. This is the cake board that I want to cover. This is a 12-inch cake board, and there's an 8-inch cake on top. So I want to grab a 12-inch and an 8-inch cake pan. So this is a 12-inch pan, and as you can see, it's the perfect size. And here is the 8-inch cake pan, and you can see that the cake is the size of the pan. So I'm going to put this back in the refrigerator, and we will roll out the fondant. This fondant has been sitting for about 15 minutes. And I can tell that the Tylose powder has started to work. It's holding its shape much better. That texture is no longer in here. It's much smoother, so this is perfect to use. So I just want to knead this together, and I want to roll it out big enough so I could put the 12-inch cake pan on top and cut that out. And now I have my 12-inch pan here, so what I'm going to do is put it upside down and make sure that it covers the whole thing, and it does. And I'm just going to press it down and turn it just a little bit to make the impression. Perfect. And the reason that I want to do turn the pan upside down is because it's slightly larger, and this way we can cut it down to size. And now I want to put the 8-inch pan facing up because this is a little smaller than the cake was. If I turn this up, remember I turned this upside down on the cake, and this was the exact diameter that the cake was. So I want to turn it facing up because it's a little smaller. And I want to center this because my cake is centered on the cake board. I'm just looking around here, making sure that it looks even. And then I'm just taking a needle tool and going to trace the entire thing. Now I have this little wheel cutter, and I just want to cut this inside circle out first. And then take my pizza cutter and cut the outside. And now I want to grab my cake out of the refrigerator. All right, now I want to find the front of my cake. Generally, the front of the cake is going to be what looks the smoothest and is the most symmetrical going back. So I just want to turn it around, see what's the best part. And I like this part right here. If this is the front, then this is the back right here. I'm just going to mark with a tiny little mark on here so I know that's where the back is. Now I'm going to get piping gel around the inner edge and then put shortening around the outer part. So where it's going to touch the cake, I just want to put some piping gel down, just a thin coating of it. And the reason I use piping gel as it's closer to the cake is because the piping gel is less forgiving and it doesn't really move, and it's really going to hold the fondant against the cake. I'm going to use Crisco or shortening on the rest of the cake board because the shortening is more forgiving, and I'll be able to move it around once I have it on the board. And now I'm putting shortening on the rest of the cake board. And now here's the back of my cake. So this is where I'm going to have the seam. Now I'm just going to cut a line so I can open it up, and I'm going to start in the very back and place this around the cake. So starting here where that notch is, and I'm pushing it up against the cake. And where it overlaps in the back, I'm just going to cut through both pieces all the way down to the cake board. Remove the top piece and remove the bottom piece and press it together. And I just want to refine this, so I have a fondant smoother and I'm pushing it up towards the cake and smoothing it down. So I'm just kind of rubbing it on top. And now I want to trim it to size, so I have a wet paper towel that I can keep wiping my X-Acto blade off because the fondant is going to start to stick to it. And I'm going to hold this against the cake board, so I have to peel this up a little bit to find it. And I have it perpendicular with the cake board, and I'm just pulling the excess fondant out with my bottom hand and using the X-Acto knife to cut it so it's flush with the cake board. All right, now that that's all done, I'm just going to take my finger and I'm just smoothing those jagged cuts. Wait, even on the cake board, I smooth my cuts. It's just the fondant is a little jagged and has little pieces sticking off of it. This cake board I made has 3 cake circles in it. I have a video showing you how I make the foil covered cake boards, and I will link that below. And then with this fondant on top, I'm going to need 5/8 inch of a ribbon to wrap around, and that's the perfect height. Measuring the ribbon, let it overlap a little bit and cut. Now I'm just going to take the lid and press it against here, and what I'm doing is I'm smoothing the foil against the board because the foil is a little lumpy, and this helps the ribbon lay flat. I have this non-toxic glue stick, and I'm going to get a little bit of glue around the outer perimeter and then all along the back of the ribbon. Starting in the back where the seam is, place the ribbon down, hold it with one finger, stretch it around, and then use my other finger to press it against the side of the cake and go the entire way around. Where it overlaps, just get a little more glue down, and this is disappearing purple, so you could see it now, but as it dries, it'll dry clear. And then just like to take my finger one more time and rub it around to make sure that this is completely adhered. Now, if I look back here, it's gapping from the ribbon a little bit, and this is where I have some of the shortening, which is nice. So now I can use my thumb and kind of pull the fondant out, and because there's piping gel right here, it's not going to pull it away from the cake. So while the fondant is still pliable, I can move it into the correct position, making sure that it's touching the ribbon and touching the cake. And since this is white fondant, I have white buttercream. My buttercream is the same color as my fondant. So I have a little bit of white buttercream. If I want to patch the seam shut, what I want to do is just I have this little palette knife, and I can get a tiny, tiny bit of buttercream over the seam. And this you can only do if you have buttercream that's the same color as your fondant. It just makes the seam less noticeable, although it's in the back, but still. And then I'm going to stick this back in the refrigerator, and the fondant will solidify. Then I'll be able to handle it. I don't want to handle it too much right now in case I put my finger on top of the board. I don't want to dent the fondant, so I'm just going to let it sit for a couple hours before I handle it. So this will go back into the refrigerator, and then I will stack it and finish decorating it. So how easy was that? I prefer that so much more than rolling out the long strip and wrapping it around the cake, because I find that the strip doesn't really contour. It can get a little bit lumpy where it touches the cake, where you're trying to push it against the cake. And this way, you just have to make sure that you're measuring everything to size. I like to cut the center hole where the cake is just a tiny bit smaller, and cut the outer rim of the circle a little larger. That way, you can cut it down to size. And like I showed you, it's important to have the piping gel around the cake, and then I like to do the shortening on the outer edge. That way you can maneuver it and move it into place. So I think that's it. I hope that helped you guys out. If you have any other questions or comments, leave them below. And you can follow me on socials and check out my website. It's listed in the description below as well. And if you want to stick around, you can watch these 2 videos next. And hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Please like this video if you liked it. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.